just as soon as I...
I do not get up in time today or yesterday or Monday.
There's the sheet.
You realize we read the Parsha 3 times this week so far because of Rosh Chodesh.
Read the Parsha?
I don't think so. The Parsha that we read this week was from Numbers. It was about the dedication of the Mishkan.
Right. That was not 3 times. That was every day of Hanukkah.
Oh, I thought that was an extra one because of Rosh Chodesh.
Oh, no.
I read that one too.
No, Rosh Chodesh was just, the extra portion, 3 readings yesterday. But actually Rosh Chodesh is the main reading for Rosh Chodesh. Hanukkah gets slapped onto it. But Hanukkah has its own reading every other day. So I thought we would take a look at the very end of the Parsha, because this is where the drama starts really coming in here. As we come to the climax of the Joseph story. And here is what Judah says, after they discover this filched...
wasn't filched, it was planted.
The planted
silver chalice
stuff in Benjamin's bag. So everybody trots back to court, and they know they're in for it. Actually,
they were going to let them go. He says, "We'll just take Benjamin for our slave. Y'all can go home."
Right. That's what Joseph says. You can leave Benjamin with us. The rest of you didn't do anything. Yeah, we'll just keep him here. And the kids say, "Oh, right. Dad's gonna love that one."
Yeah, so they cared enough about their dad that they were not going to abandon Benjamin.
Yeah, so
maybe they even cared about Benjamin, although I noticed that one of these midrashim says that they didn't believe Benjamin's innocent.
So here are the exact words of Judah in the Torah. It says, "What can we say to my Lord? How can we plead? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered the crime of your servants."
By which he means this crime against Joseph when they sold it.
Well, yeah, that because, nobody said that anybody else had committed a crime. So, and we'll see a little bit later on that it's very clear that, this verse is meant to allude to the original sale of Joseph.
Yeah.
Okay? So the first piece here from Midrash Tanchuma, very interesting. And this is one of those Midrashim that they don't teach you in Sunday school.
They better not.
The brothers assumed that Benjamin had actually stolen the cup.
That's a terrible Midrash.
Yeah, well, that's why they didn't teach you in Sunday school. Okay? They begin beating him, saying, "You're a thief just like your mother."
And she took the teraphim.
Rachel humiliated our father Jacob by stealing Laban's idols. Now you have embarrassed us.
Now you have embarrassed us.
Right, it was you. Right. There's all this trouble runs, they have this trouble that runs in the family, but they want to pin it on
Rachel
one corner of the family. And how does that work out?
It doesn't.
It doesn't work out very well at all. Okay?
If they don't return to their dad with Benjamin.
I'm sorry, Dale, I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
If they don't return to their dad with Benjamin, their dad's going to have their hide.
Or else
And
they'll have
more.
a heart attack.
Yeah, there's no telling what'll happen, but they know it's not going to be good. So, you know, good old Judah steps up, you know, because Tamar taught him right? And Judah is the one who next week is going to, you know, offer himself in place of Benjamin. Right?
And that's when Benjamin,
But, you know, I think this midrash is so interesting. You know, why is this their first assumption?
because they've got it in for Joseph and he's got the same mother, and they're still upset that their mother wasn't favored.
Well, you know, I don't know that the boys are upset that their mother wasn't favored. I think they're more concerned with the fact that Joseph was favored. Right?
Yeah, but this is his full brother.
Well, yes.
And
however,
they had the same mother.
There's never been any other sign of a problem between Benjamin and the brothers.
But the father does say, he's all I have left of his mother.
Yes.
And
yes.
And that's as much as if to say, y'all don't count.
But that's more between Jacob and Rachel than it is between the brothers and Benjamin. If anything, I mean, Benjamin is pretty young at this point when Joseph is sold, right? It's not clear that there's jealousy of Benjamin, but it's interesting to see how quickly they turn on him right here.
But when they keep saying, we've got to take Benjamin with us, and he says, no, he's the only one I have left. Y'all go and risk your lives. I have to protect Benjamin. Y'all don't count. Benjamin's the only one that counts. Maybe they could be jealous of him on that account.
Possibly. But now Benjamin has come with him. Now, when, you know, a cup turned up in Shimon's sack, none of them said, what'd you do that for? But when this happens to Benjamin,
well, do you have an explanation, Rabbi?
I'm sorry?
Do you have an explanation?
Well, you've listed a couple of possibilities, Ann.
Well, how about you?
No, I don't have a simple explanation. It may be that just because he is a relative outsider to his brothers, and really to all of his brothers, not just the sons of Leah,
who are half of the brothers,
that it's easy for them to turn on him. And the evidence seems to show that Benjamin actually did take the cup. It's in his bag.
It's in his bag, but all the brothers had their money.
Yes.
And all the brothers had their money last time.
But Judah says,
hence the Midrash is, pretty tough on the brothers.
Judah says God has discovered, he realizes that the guilt that they are all carrying from something long ago is now being punished. That God did it. It wasn't Benjamin that did it.
Well, that's Judah speaking.
Yeah.
That's not everyone else.
But he was one of the, it says, how many of the brothers? The brothers. Does that mean all of the brothers? Does that include Judah?
We don't know.
Judah was
No, the Midrash is nicely vague. But Judah seems to be saying something different. He's saying, no, it's not that Benjamin did this. This is something that God has put together so as to pay us back.
Yeah, that's what Judah says here in the Torah itself.
Yeah. Well, more on that point a little later on. All right. So also included here this note from Professor Robert Alter, the famous translator of Scripture, who says, as the brothers took silver when they sold Joseph into slavery in Egypt, so now they are unable to return the silver and get out of the plight in which they find themselves. Now, what Dr. Alter is driving at here is one of the age-old themes in the book of Genesis, and certainly one that plays out here, and that is measure for measure.
Yeah, and this one is nice and ironic too.
Yes, it is. Okay. Measure for measure is like the almost, you could say it's the plot of Genesis. You know, yes, it's the family of Abraham, but it's not just the family. It's what they do and what comes back to them. So, yeah, they cheated with silver, and now they will be punished with silver. And interestingly, just this next little piece, Kimchi quotes this verse, really wonderful verse for this context, where he says, if a righteous man abandons his righteousness and does wrong, I put a stumbling block before him. As that's also a statement about measure for measure. Right? The brothers abandoned righteousness, although frankly, I didn't think they were the most righteous bunch of guys around, but okay, clearly Joseph is, selling their brother and passing him off as dead is another thing. And so this is the stumbling block that God has prepared for them. Okay. Comments, questions? Okay. So let's see what, yes?
Somebody says that the story of Joseph is somehow analogous to the story of King David. I don't understand why, but I've read that somewhere.
Maybe because King David was, he had his highs and lows, and we're not talking about after he becomes king. He's he's a mere shepherd, right? He's the youngest son, right? So that's another likeness with Joseph, at least until Benjamin is born. And then King David, becomes a favorite in the court of King Saul, and then is persecuted by King Saul and forced out. And he winds up becoming an ally of the Philistines for a while.
Yeah, that was weird.
You said it. So there are a couple of parallels between Joseph and David. So, just as Joseph has to go down to Egypt, David winds up going down with the Philistines. Right. Let's take a look at Rashi here.
Oh.
Yeah, well, we always like to know what Rashi says about problems that come up in the text.
Yeah.
It says Judah speaks in the plural. Right? What can we say? He is not admitting that Benjamin did what he is accused of, only that all of them did wrong. He is saying, we know that we did not act improperly in this matter, but Hamakom, the one who is every place and who was there when we sinned against Joseph, brought it about. The divine creditor has found an opportunity to collect on his promissory note. There you are again, measure for measure. Right? Hence Rashi. Okay? Because, the question I think Rashi is addressing most simply is, why does Judah say we? No, because on the surface, it seems like, it's only Benjamin who's guilty of something, and Joseph doesn't hold anybody else responsible. He says, oh, Benjamin, he'll stay here and be my slave. The rest of you are free.
But Joseph had ulterior motives for keeping Benjamin, because Benjamin was his brother.
Well, that's why he that's why he does it with his brother as opposed to one of the other boys.
And he was not testing them either. He wanted his brother, his good brother, his real brother, his full brother, to be with him, and he didn't care about the rest of them. I mean, they always say they chose all this to test them, and I don't think so.
If it works out that way, it seems to me that Joseph he's testing the other brothers, but what if they fail the test? So we know what's going to happen. Benjamin is not going to wind up being the slave of Joseph.
No,
Joseph would reveal himself to his true brother, and they would live down in Egypt happily ever after. Benjamin would learn a lot of history from Joseph, of course. He would learn the truth about his brothers who sold Joseph into slavery. So that is what would have happened. That's the alternate version of the conclusion to the story.
Well, Joseph had no reason to think anything good about his other brothers. Why would he want anything to do with them?
Right, but clearly he is also testing them. He wants to know how they feel about what they did.
Oh.
He wants to know what they've become, just as he's become what he's become. He's no longer the obnoxious 17-year-old. He's an older man. He's at the top of the world, and he's a lot wiser.
Now, it's possible that he might want to know. He might just assume that they're the same awful people that they seemed at that time.
But he could have ignored this whole business. He could have just sent them back with grain, without grain, said, or he could have revealed himself to them and thrown his brothers in jail. He could have just, slapped them in prison right away. But he doesn't. And from that, I think it's fair to infer that he's testing.
Mm.
He wants to know how they're going to respond this time. And that's why he sets up Benjamin as the fall guy. And that, as we see from Judah's speech at the beginning of next week's Sedra, that is what we learn from the story, right? That they actually have changed.
He set Benjamin as the fall guy because he wanted Benjamin to stay with him.
Well, but
and he was happy for them to go away and never come back.
Only if it works out that way, Ann.
He probably expected it to work out that way.
It's going to work out that way.
Well, he's fine.
If one of them is going to be left behind in Egypt, he wants it to be Benjamin.
And he probably is perfectly content for Benjamin to stay and the rest of them to go. And when he finds out that Judah is really changed, he bursts into tears and he can't stop crying.
Yes. So that's for later.
But that was so different from what he expected.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. So it may possibly have been his intention all along, just to engineer this so that Benjamin would remain with him in Egypt. But we don't know that for sure. Otherwise, he could have, if that was all that he wanted, he could have simply slapped his other brothers in jail.
Oh, that would have been petty. He would.
Well,
he would have sent him home.
People in high places in government, do have some capacity for petty revenge, especially if they sold you into slavery. That's not a petty thing.
Well, look how
you want measure for measure. That's also a possibility.
Mm.
All right. Other questions or comments before we go on? Okay. So next we have a very interesting midrash. And let's go back to the original verse. Judah's statement here. Really, it has 4 parts and 3 of them go together. He says, "What can we say to my Lord? How can we plead? How can we prove our innocence?" And essentially, all 3 of those say the same thing. Okay? Is that pretty clear? Yeah. So the Midrash addresses the question, what is gained by Judah saying each of these? And the 4th sentence is, that's a whole nother problem. We'll come back to that too. Right? So here's the Midrash. What can we say to my Lord? Right? Here's one interpretation. The first piece, what can we say to my Lord? This refers to the first money in Benjamin's sack. How can we plead? This refers to the second money in Benjamin's sack. Remember, he gave him extra over the other brothers. And then, how can we prove our innocence? There's the cup. Right? Second answer, and this one's, slightly R-rated. What can we say to my Lord refers to the incident of Tamar. How can we plead? This refers to what Reuven did in taking his father's concubine. How can we prove our innocence? This is for what they did to Shechem. Right? So, you talk about big time problems in the family. These are the 3 episodes that we already read about. These are the 3 things which make it, as clear as possible that the sons are not exactly model citizens. And then the third set, what can we say to my Lord? Means, what shall we say to our father about Joseph? Right? So that was the first thing. How can we plead about Shimon? Right? And what was the sin of Shimon?
As you said before.
Yep. And how can we prove our innocence? That's going to be when we come home without Benjamin. Right. So, it alludes to these other sins of the brothers. Right? So you have the 3 statements, right? And you have 3 different interpretations about each of them. Right? So of these 3 interpretations, which part of the Midrash would you choose? Which one would be your favorite?
The middle one.
You like the middle one because that's the R-rated one, right?
No, that's not why.
That's not why.
No, that it's because it tells about 3 sins that the brothers did. The first one doesn't talk about sins at all, and the third one goes, I don't know, a little bit. No, it's the only one that has names a sin for each one.
Yeah, the last part just alludes to the sins. The second one, it's very direct, right? And I'll grant you the first one's very weak, right? Certainly compared to the other 2. But I agree with you, and I think that's the one that I would pick. That's the one that, if you talk about sins, that's maybe what they would have been thinking about. Unless you throw in having sold Joseph, right? Because maybe that was even worse.
Maybe it was so much worse that they didn't even want to mention it.
Maybe.
That he's going to mention it. Well,
yeah.
I have to mention it.
Yeah. So
Joseph mentioned it.
Yeah. Whatever it is, it's like, there's, Judah is acknowledging that there were multiple sins, and, we have no defense. We are big time sinners. And now what do we do? Other comments or questions? All right. So let me go to this piece from Nechama Leibovitz, where she talks about these 3 parts in the verse. All right? The Midrash sees a triple implication in the verse, explaining the word Adoni, my Lord, in three different ways. One is the Egyptian governor standing in front of them. Two, the Lord of the universe, who knows their guilt. And three, as their aged father in Canaan, against whom they had sinned. Right? So who's the one, who's the Lord that's being referred to? Right? Is it Lord Viceroy Joseph or Tzafnat Paneach? Is it God himself? Or is it the Lord of the family, meaning Jacob? And she continues, the Midrash unearths for us the 9 different sins recalled by the text, showing us how the brothers repented not merely of one wrongdoing, but emulated the true penitent who sees his guilt and sin in every step and turn, but emulated the true penitent who sees his guilt sees his guilt and sin in every step and turn, a thought which is expressed instructively in the phrase in Psalm 51, and my sin is ever before me. After his brothers had reached this level of penitence, remorse, and sense of sin, Joseph can then make himself known to them. All right. So here, first of all, when Judah speaks of my Lord, he's not just referring to Joseph. Maybe he's referring to the Lord, or possibly also to the Lord of the family, Jacob. Right? And maybe that is just, kind of a Freudian slip on his part, but maybe not. Right? So it is before all of them, Joseph, God, and Jacob, that the brothers know that they are guilty. Right? So which of these pictures of the brothers is correct? Is the picture of the Midrash Tanhuma, the text we saw at the outset, is that the right view of the brothers? Or is it this view represented by Judah that they are penitents? Right? Because the first Midrash says that, they're blaming each other, right? But maybe they have come to accept their sins and to repent for them. What do you think? Are they good penitents or not? You're shaking your head, Anne, like you're not really convinced.
No, they really have repented.
They have?
They have. They've been looking at their father for some 20 years and they're miserable about it. They're sorry. They don't talk about it, but each one in his own heart regrets what he did.
Okay. Del, Barbara, do you agree?
I think Judah's conscience is bothering him. And he's trying to figure out how he can get out of it without too much more difficulty. And he knows that he took responsibility for Benjamin. So he doesn't want to get the wrath of his father because his father still is looking for Joseph.
So is he, willing to sacrifice himself rather than have to go back and face his father without Benjamin?
Yeah.
I think so.
They all feel bad, but he's willing to sacrifice himself. because it's on his shoulders.
Well, he did say that was what he would do. Right? So let me throw a more abstract question about this, because the real question is, are they really penitent? Right? How do you know? How do you know if someone is really sorry for what they've done?
That they don't do it again.
Well, nobody's going to throw Joseph into slavery again.
But they could abandon Benjamin to slavery. That
Well,
would be
that's
doing
true.
it again.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good answer, I think. They could have, they're not going to let that happen again. Right? But, again, in a more abstract sense, how do we know when
We
someone
don't
is
always
sorry?
know. We don't always know. Sometimes we know.
We don't always know because we haven't necessarily seen the signs. But what are the signs?
The way they behave and the look on their face and the tone of their voice. And
well, I don't know. I think, a lot of those things can be faked.
If they don't do it again, that's something.
Well, they don't do it again. Or that certainly God knows if they don't do it again. But maybe they just don't want to take another risk.
Well, at this time, Joseph has no way of knowing if they would have left Benjamin.
Yes.
But so far, they haven't left him. They were given permission to leave and they didn't go. They came back.
Yeah.
That's already something. A little
They're
something.
afraid that somebody's going to call out the Egyptian army and go after them.
But they were given permission to leave.
Yeah,
Are they afraid that Joseph will change his
wondering why, when they discovered this, when they start to think, well, why did he give us permission to leave if this is in our bags? Well, what's going to happen to us? When are we going to find that we've been had or captured or whatever?
If the brothers leave at this time, then they know full well that in not too distant future, they're going to have to come back for more food, or they're going to sit in Canaan and starve. So they've got to get this situation dealt with.
Yes.
That's an important point, Dale.
Yeah. So for sure, everybody's going back.
Well, if they all go back and they react as a group, then perhaps nobody's going to be singled out, because if one doesn't go back, then he may be considered guilty and get punished.
Right. Right. So, as we see, Judah will offer himself as a substitute. Right?
Well, Judah also has a family back in Canaan, and he'd like them to survive this famine.
Yes.
The others may have, some of the others, one of them said, if I don't bring him back, you can kill my children, which was pretty stupid. I think that was the oldest one, was it? Shimon?
That was Reuben.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How's that for a non sequitur?
It's not very helpful. He's already lost one son. Now he wants to lose his grandsons too.
Yeah. So we see how Jacob reacts to that. So anyway, this is, the interesting thing here, because Judah is willing to sacrifice himself. That's how we know, at least, that he is a penitent. That's how we know he's sorry for what they did.
Well, Judah is willing to stand up and try to save the family.
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily have anything to do with penitence.
Well, if he were not a penitent, he might not, he might care a lot more for himself and his own children, or what's left of them, than the family at large. The fact that he's willing to think about the family at large shows some contrition, because he knows how much damage was done to the family before.
Well, he says it in the beginning. God has uncovered the crime of your servants, plural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He got to be aware that this was wrong.
Yes.
As he didn't know it before, he knows it now.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting thing right there, that the crime of your servants, plural. In other words, it's not that one person took your cup, it's that there's a lot of bad stuff that we've done in this family. Okay. Right? But obviously, you know, and we've talked about this a couple of times, and you know, when we were closer to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you know, what are the steps in repentance?
You confess it to Hashem. You make restitution to the person.
So here, the question is the related question: how do you know that that someone is penitent? Right? So I think this gives you a good answer to that. Let me go to the next piece. This piece from Benno Jacob, who says they might have asked several things. Is it conclusive evidence of someone's theft if the object is found with him? Can it not have been placed there maliciously? You imagine the brothers as budding Talmudists, right? Offering these kinds of, are there witnesses to the theft? What of their words to the steward? When and how could the theft of Benjamin have been possible? And yet they forego any argument, not only because it would have been futile before the powerful man, but they immediately understand this misfortune, even if the present charge is false. It is punishment for another deed. Mm-hmm. So
in other words, their conscience started to bother him, or has been bothering him. And so yes. Now yes. When they're saying, whatever this is, we're being punished for what we did earlier to Joseph.
Yes. This is the, you know, collecting the debt. Okay, that's what Rashi said before. The divine creditor has found an opportunity to collect, and they know it. Right? And that's why they don't plead their case. You know, all these years, they got away with it.
Well, you
know, it's like a Dostoevsky in Crime and Punishment. And it's almost, it seems almost that they're relieved that this is out, and they recognize and receive some punishment, you know? And, you know, I think, you know, Dostoevsky's question was, is there a psychological need for justice? And maybe a little bit of that is illustrated in what Judah says. God has uncovered the crime of your servants. Right? You know, most of the time, when we find out about a crime going unpunished, it feels wrong. It just, you know, the world isn't right. And, you know of detectives who have cases that have been open for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years or longer, and they can't let go of it because it's just not right. The world's not right until there's justice. And they're going to go after that. And they never, even if the boss says, okay, this is cold, we're not going to work on that anymore. We're not likely to find the killer. But they never let go. The detective never lets go because it's just not right. Mm-hmm. You know, the world is all out of order until there's punishment. And maybe the guilty person sometimes feels the same way. Mm-hmm.
Some guilty people never feel bad about it.
Well, yes. I mean, many of them are psychopaths.
Yeah. They're not capable of it.
Yeah. There are, you know, I mean, I can't think of a good example of one in the Bible. There's no shortage of corruption, but an out and out psychopath is somebody who's never guilty, right? No matter what he does, no matter how bad it is, it's not me. It's not somebody else. Somebody else did it.
Well, I think the Torah is trying to teach us moral lessons so that if they did have a psychopath there, it would not be the point of the Torah, it would not be the point of the lessons.
Yeah, they don't want to teach us to be psychopaths.
Right. Well, the idea is to make us question and to feel guilty, and because we are guilty, to do right. It's not to just brush it off.
Right. The rest of us non-psychopaths, you know, we feel guilty because we should. Hmm? So guilt serves a very positive purpose, and it also shows that we're not psychopaths. Right? Which is a good thing. Right? Sforno, by the way, offers this in somewhat different words. This whole concept of, you know, that we know this is what this is really about. We are not guilty of this crime, he says. We have committed no wrong against you at all. But God has arranged for you to punish us for a crime we committed long ago. So, you know, that's the biblical view of mida keneged mida, measure for measure. Once again. Okay, any last questions, comments?
It's interesting that what Sforno says, he says, we have committed no wrong against you, not realizing who he is and that it is he whom they have committed the crime against.
Right. Right.
Are we having class the next 2 weeks?
I was just about to say that. The answer is no. The rabbi on high, that would be Rabbi Morgan, has declared that we will not have class the next 2 weeks.
Why? So that we can celebrate Christmas Eve?
That's correct.
Well, Christmas Eve is our anniversary.
Well, there you are, see?
You got married on Christmas Eve?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Mazel tov.
Thank you. Well, we had to have a long weekend, and
that's a long weekend.
It was a long weekend, and both the rabbi and the cantor were in Chicago in Highland Park, and the synagogue was available. The only hitch was whether my mother could get the Jewish caterer to help with the wedding, and they were able to get people together to do it, and they did it and brought it all into the synagogue kitchen. we could not, it had to be in the synagogue because the hotels did not want to commit their people for Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So what year was
And then
that?
the other problem,
1988.
Barbara, is, you know, were they able to get enough Chinese food?
No, we had a kosher wedding.
There is
You know,
kosher
nowadays,
Chinese food.
you could have gotten kosher Chinese too, although
Not in 1988 in Chicago.
We could have it. No.
maybe not.
In Houston, we had it in Houston. We
I
had
don't think
Chinese food,
Mitsuyan was open yet, Barbara.
There
Okay.
was a wonderful vegetarian in Houston on Westheimer.
No, we had, my mother had chicken and we had, and salmon.
Good.
And
Sounds
the
yummy.
entire Viennese table was all carved sweets, including our wedding cake. They even
Well, wish you a happy anniversary.
thank you.
And of course,
Many.
you know, we'll have the chance to honor you Shabbat right after that. And as your reward, you get to take 2 weeks off. We all get 2 weeks off.
New Year's Eve too?
Yeah.
I don't consider that a reward.
Well, it depends on what you would do otherwise on New Year's Eve. But we'll leave you to ponder that. Ashley, thank you again. And
You're welcome.
we will
Thank you.
we'll
Rich.
get back together for Shmot.
The first Thursday of the new year.
That's right. And the first Sedra of the next book. All right.
January 7th.
Happy Hanukkah, happy end of Hanukkah, Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you soon.
Okay,
Happy
Shabbat
Hanukkah.
Thank
shalom.
you, Rabbi.
Thank
you, Gail
you.
and Barbara, for being here.
Amen.